Hello, Starseeds and magical friends, and welcome to 2024 and the first live stream of the year, of the month, of the new age, let's call it. And I am your host, Rachel Z. We are going to be talking all about dragon stories this evening. So let me just, oh my gosh, I had everything all set up perfectly, and then of course my Gemini moon nature just decided to move everything last minute when it really didn't need to be messed with at all. So back to the original statement. So we're going to go over dragon stories for a couple of reasons, mainly because dragons are symbolically very much, I think, misunderstood in a lot of stories. In Western culture, they tend to be demonized, much like, let's say, feminine nature and other things, which is why the dragon warriors is a thing. So we're going to get into dragon stories, all of that kind of good juicy stuff. But before we get into that, we're going to go into a reading of the chart of the everlasting now, and we're going to first go into the star stories as it comes to dragons, and the most common one that we know is of Draco, or the Draco, or what was also known as the Ouroboros in the sky. So there's a few stories. Some of them are a bit more common, like about the golden apples and Draco being the guardian of them and being one of the feats of Hercules, which is all still relevant to astrology because the 12 labors of Hercules are said to be mapped to the zodiac wheel. That is not the topic of today's talk. That is a topic for another time. It's also of debate which labor lines up to what sign. So that's all to say that the wheel itself, while it has multi-meanings, also is one of them. A very important one, I think, that is universal is the idea of time and the wheel of time, and how astrology and looking at the cosmic map of things is more of a way of figuring out a place within space-time, as opposed to it being this kind of oracle, although it may be used to forecast certain things as it comes to cycles of time and grander cycles of time. But that's not today's conversation, although it could lead to such topics as well. So the dragon warriors, just to take it back, story time for Tuesday. So because I think I sometimes talk about things with this idea that everyone already has the backstory, and I've realized in crafting a fantasy saga that in doing a lot of tutorials and a lot of workshops and just working on a lot of creative writing and less writing for corporate, less writing emails and stuff, even though I still have a lot of emails to catch up on right now. But if we what was I even talking about? But yes, The Dragon Warriors was a book that I originally wrote when I was 14 in 1999 about me and my best friends saving the world. It was heavily inspired by things like the Power Rangers, as well as Sailor Moon, and anime in general, as well as this idea of configurations and a superhero team coming together. I always like the idea of little quests and putting together different personality types to uncover different types of quests, so that you get different experiences or some sort of magical tool. And as we go into some of the stories that we'll be going into a lot of these live streams and these shows, is that in going through these stories, in these fantastical tales of myth and dragons and fairies and intrigue between the gods and goddesses, and these tales is a deeper truth as to how we figure out where we are in a grander cosmic space-time, because there's an idea of when we're personifying, we're humanizing essences, right? And we are also that as well. So yeah, it's all of that stuff is really hard to talk about, and like I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation, and you'll see that a lot of my older videos did do a lot of that, like PowerPoint presentations. And not to say that I'm not going to have PowerPoint presentations as I put together different analyses of different stories, but that's all going to go, I think, behind different courses and different paywalls as it comes to what neurolinguistic astrology is from my lens of looking at astrology. Because within astrology, if we look at the chart, so that's a great segue to go into that. So this is the chart of the everlasting now. And if we look at the chart itself, I'm going to make it bigger. Hold on here. And then I'm going to get into Draco very quickly. I'm going to try to be succinct and not go off on tangents. Keep the show nice and I do think that I should get some copyright-free background music. I was dealing with some Twitch stuff with mine and Kevin's last Halo stream, and they like flagged copyright music that wasn't even the same music that was even whatever. That's a story for another time. But okay, this is the chart of the now. Let's see. Maybe I should refresh this. We are in Capricorn season. We're not going to pay too much attention to the ascendant, because the ascendant is like, if you're born at this exact time, yes, you'd want to pay attention to this quite deeply, just because that would let you know a little bit more about the aspects that would be around with your birth time. I mean, talking to a lot of astrologers lately, you know, it's been said that your ascendant, your rising sign, actually holds a lot more of your personality. Like there's this idea that the sun is your personality, but I've become more aware of like what the sun represents symbolically more as like your soul, right? And your solar plexus, and more of like a deeper will. And so the energy to fulfill your dreams is more of what the sun is, and how that is colored and what that looks like, of course, is plays with what your ascendant is. But if we think of like life as like a video game, your ascendant sign is like your main avatar, your main personality trope. If I'm going to be a mage, if I'm going to be a berserker, I'm going to be like an elf assassin, which is what I usually play it as. That's that initial role. But then there's like a whole character arc that can come through it, where you can end up being a whole different class if the stories take you in that path, right? And that's what your starseed blueprint, what your natal chart can kind of tell you, the different potential storylines and pathways that are available to you in this lifetime that are going to feel a lot more in flow with you. It can feel like, I feel like sometimes we get signs in our life and we like ignore them. You know, like that, like they're like clues that tell you that you're not necessarily going in the right direction, right? And this can express itself in things like disease, like you know, all the bad decisions of not taking care of your body, or if you choose every day like I'm gonna sleep in and not do my morning stretch that I promised myself I would do, but instead you actually fulfill all those, you're going to have other things available for your body to be able to then do, right? Splits may be available to you in your future because of you stretching and making a practice of it day by day and getting inch by inch stretchier and stretchier, right? And so when we look at the chart, I like to look at it as if you had a baby being born right now, this is what their birth chart would be. And so you think of the time that we're in right now, you will be imprinted in the time in which you're formed, just like the land in which you're formed, all of that energy coming together to create the avatar that is you to fulfill certain storylines in this life. And so looking at the chart right now, we have the sun in Capricorn. We have the moon is very cuspy here. This is nice beautiful liminal space between Libra and Virgo. I've been like learning to DJ with Kevin, and I picked these songs that are supposed to correspond to the zodiac, and trying to find a way to transition between the songs hasn't necessarily been easy because I didn't pick songs that were like necessarily harmonically in key. So it's been a challenge to do that. And if we do think about the wheel kind of being like a music record, you're not going to be like, oh, one song has stopped and now here is now the next song at this exact moment. It's more of a blending between the two. And I get it when people say like cusping wise, like I feel like if I'm a sun sign and I feel like I'm more of a certain sign, I attribute that to other things happening in the chart rather than where your sun is sitting. So me personally, I am a Taurus, but I do have a lot of Aries placements, and I'm a very early Taurus. So I'm like an April Taurus. So I don't always feel very Taurusy, but I do have some Taurus traits. So it's like one of those things I'm like, does that mean that I'm like a cusp? Because I'm like near, but I don't really feel like I'm a cuspy sign because I am a Taurus. So that's all to say, all of us are all of the signs. It's just about in you what you feel you express most and flow with you at the time that you're at, because as you go through life, you're going to be more of one thing than another. That's why we talk about things like your Saturn return, which is like every 30 years, where you get like this like midlife crisis or this like life reviewing, like, oh, what have I done with my life for the last 30 years? I'm gonna have to like revisit that. And anyways, I got completely sidetracked in terms of what I was talking about, but I was talking about liminal spaces and the space in between signs. And when we look at the moon here, the moon represents your inner world. There's this, the moon looks like it's opposing Neptune a bit. Neptune is supposed to be the higher octave of Venus. There's a lot of yods going on right now. I like this calculator because it brings out the aspects to the forefront quickly in a very symbolic manner, even though it does look like it's like really like crazy right now. But yeah, look at this yod. But that yod is with the midheaven, and the midheaven is another mathematical point based on things like the ascendant, and we're not. So going back to what we're looking at here, we're going to look at Mercury is in Sagittarius and is now direct. I think everyone's really happy about that. Venus is in Sagittarius right now too as well. Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. We have Venus there too. So there's 3 planets hanging out in the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also ruled by Jupiter and known as the lucky planet. It's sitting in the 3rd house, which is what the ascendant pushes it into. Not going to pay too much attention to that, but if this is the birth chart reading, that would be somewhat important. Let's see what other aspects are happening, not doing with the midheaven. Okay, so there's a T-square with Neptune opposing the moon, and then basically having a squaring off with Mars. And so Mars is like drive, and it's like if the sun was the captain of your soul, then Mars is like your first mate, your first in command. So like the ability to kind of push that through. It's also like a fiery sign, so that's also pushed along by Sagittarius. It's in a later degree of Sagittarius. Let's look at where Mars is right now. Yeah, so Mars is here, kind of near the sun. I believe that they were closer before, but you have a lot of major players in this like underworld, underbelly of the chart in Sagittarius and Capricorn in a later phase of the chart, playing out this drama as Pluto is coming out of Capricorn and moving into Aquarius. So I do say that like my comic book, my Dragon Warrior Saga is for this generation of Pluto in Aquarius. I am a Pluto and Scorpio generation with a very close aspect with Taurus. So that's been very tough to live with and learn a lot from. I've dealt a lot with death and what it means to deal with this world, other worlds, stories. Where do stories come from? What is truth? What is mythology? What is all of this really? And I've just realized that I've always been a writer, and getting writing back for me has been quite the feat. It's taken a lot of time to dance like myself again, to write like myself again, to communicate like myself again. And we can attribute a lot of that to things like Chiron. So I have Chiron in Gemini, and there's a lot of past wounds that you have to look at with Chiron. And if we look at Chiron in a grander sense of us as humanity, it's like with it in Aries, along with the North Node, I interpret that as being like us as a collective human species. We need to warrior up now. We need to lean into our stories of power, of personal power, and not be afraid of it. It's not evil. You'll see that we can choose to have the context around the power so that it is used for benevolent uses, so that we are playing out the stories. We have many stories available to us. I have played out many stories that have not been fun for me, and I don't know why I put myself through that, but maybe it was just to live through losing a lot. I don't know, like, and sometimes it can be hard to accept your own hand in sabotaging yourself, but once you do, there is a power in accepting the understanding that you can have the story. You are the main character in your story. You are also a very important supporting role in many other people's main storybooks and in the grand library of the cosmos. Each one is incredibly important, you know, like you have a favorite movie in a trilogy, but like you need all three of them for that favorite to even exist. So same goes for like all the roles in a play and all of the players within here. Like I was hearing a podcast about like, you know, like how Saturn gets a bad rap. I have to agree, right? But Saturn also represents time, and we think about time and matter and what it means to like live out a finite existence when you're an infinite being. And that's why I get sad when I watch movies sometimes and it's a really good movie, because you're like, oh, is this gonna end? Or I have moments sometimes when I throw parties, or like when me and Kevin got married, and you're like that moment where like things are like amazing. You have like a perfect crystalline moment and you want to take a snapshot and you go like, I'm going to remember this, because time is not linear. It's happening all the time. So you can kind of like just like, okay, this is now like a movie moment in my memory that I will come back to forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So with that, let's go into some dragon stories. I'm going to go into, hopefully I have my desktop audio. Sean Connery does the voice of Draco. I'm not going to play the whole scene. Let me just find the part. So in Dragonheart, bless Kevin for finding me movies that line up with, I forgot about this movie. But in Dragonheart, I'm not going to spoil it, but the dragon dies at the end and he's the last dragon. And if you remember how Sean Connery says, I'm not going to do it. Should I do it? I am the last one. And because his heart is tied to an evil king, he sacrifices himself and he helps all the villagers. Let's see. So once he dies, his star goes up to, yeah, once he dies, his star goes up to the Draco constellation. It's like where all the dragon stories, all the dragon stars get to go afterwards. 1996, Dragonheart. Yeah, so let me know if you've watched that movie and yeah, if you liked it. Then Sean Connery as that voice is pretty amazing as well. And you know, like you believe in like a king and you want to, as a knight, serve a king. That is the embodiment of what it means to be divine, because that is going to go into what dragons actually represent in a lot of mythology that is not Western mythology. If you want to take a look at, I like anime, so if you can tell, like I'm very influenced by anime. Sailor Moon is like my girl, so I if you think about what anime does a really good job of, they love grounding a lot of their stories within mythology, and not just their mythology, but Gnostic mythology, Greek and Roman mythology, different stories around the world, a melding of things like alchemy. They've got things like Full Metal Alchemist. I went down a whole rabbit hole, which we were going to go down through together as well, as it comes to dragons and what they represent. But we're going to go through my many tabs as we go through what the stories are in terms of the truth of what dragons represent. And then I'm going to close this all off with what dragons represent in terms of the dragon warriors, and also where you can support the launch of the Dragon Warriors, as well as the mini movie that's going to be going alongside it as well. So all of those fun details I will have in the upcoming show notes, as well as the streaming schedule for all of this stuff, as I am now much more organized in 2024. Woohoo. Okay, so I have some beautiful imagery here of dragons. I love them, actually. Okay, so the Draco constellation itself, just some facts, I guess, to ground it in some science, let's say. So it is Latin for dragon. It is a constellation in the northern skies we saw in Dragonheart. I can tell you the story that has to deal with Hera, and Hera is actually in my book. Queen Matiko turns Hera against the other goddesses, and I mean, Hera's already kind of like a jealous wifey goddess. We're going to go over her tomorrow as well, as we go over wife goddess archetypes. But that is no spoiler alert, I guess, for tomorrow. But it is a constellation in the northern sky at about 18 hours right ascension and 70 degrees north in declination. Its brightest star is at Tannin, Arabic for dragon's head, with a magnitude of 2.2. Because of the precession of the Earth's axis, the star Thuban was the pole star in the 3rd millennium BCE. So this is kind of interesting, because back in the day, in the 3rd millennium, the pole star, so the main north star, like the star by which our ancestors would navigate, would be the Thuban star, which was part of Draco. And so the identification of this constellation with the dragon dates back to the Babylonians. In Greek mythology, Draco represented either the dragon that guarded the golden apples of the Hesperides, oh my gosh, or the form Zeus took to escape from his father Kronos. I actually did not know about this last one. I thought they were going to talk about the Athena one. So this I will have to make a note of that. I do like Zeus, and I mean, like, I guess I can't really blame. I'll have to go back to that. Let's not get lost, friends. All right. I was getting to Japanese culture of dragons as well. So Draco and the golden apples. I'm going to just give a quick run through on what that is and the story I know from Hercules, the golden apples, and Hera, and a little bit of actually like Mount Olympus world building stuff in terms of what I have actually written so far. I have a link to what you can read for Battle of Mount Olympus part 2. Okay, so Draco, according to Greek myth, was a dragon that guarded golden apples for Hera. I forget off the top of my head how these golden apples, like why they were so important to Hera, but whatever. One of the tasks that Hercules had to complete, and you guys may know that there are 12 labors of Hercules. So he went to Atlas, and Atlas in Greek mythology was known to have carried the world on his shoulders. And I don't know why he asked Atlas to do this for him, but he asked Atlas, hey, can you go steal the apples from the dragon? And I forget what happens. I think something happens to Draco and he gets put in the sky. Or Hera puts Draco in the sky as thanks for his service. But Atlas goes and gets the apples for Hercules, and in his head is like, Atlas doesn't want to be carrying the world, first of all. Atlas is also a Titan, just like Prometheus. Prometheus and Atlas. And Atlas is also related to Atlanteans. He's also the father of the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. Where was I with this now? So Atlas, when Hercules approached him and was like, listen, can you go get the apples and I'll hold the world for you for a bit? And Atlas like, sure, I'm going to trick you later. But it didn't really work out so well. I don't know how he thought he was going to handle this, but Hercules got the apples from Atlas, who got them from, like, I guess, I don't know what he did to get the apples away from Draco, but Draco was supposed to be the guardian and something happened. So that's one story. I'm not a big fan of that story. Hera is not my favorite goddess. She is a wifey goddess. We're going to get into her mythology tomorrow, along with the other wifey goddesses. I found a new one that I really like today as well. She's the goddess of dawn in Japanese culture, which I'll foreshadow a little bit just later. But Hera can be a little bit of like a jealous goddess, but like it's kind of also like, can you blame her when you have a hubby like Zeus who's like basically banging everything? So, but it's just like one of those things that, like, you know what, you kind of married that. You knew what you were getting into. The other story that we kind of saw here was the fact that Zeus apparently took the form of a dragon to escape from Kronos. And if you know anything about that story, Kronos was eating all of his kids, and except for Zeus, who usurped him. And so remember, Zeus is the youngest son, and that's something to kind of consider as well with birth order of, like, you know, the youngest son being the one to usurp the throne, or usurp leadership. So there's like this paranoia when it comes to prophecy, when it comes to that. Okay, so this is all about the sun goddess stuff. I'm just going to the Shinto religion. let's okay, Genshin Impact. That's something I do want to talk about. Yes. Okay, so I wanted to get into specifically Japanese dragons and myths and legends surrounding Japanese dragons specifically. They're very similar to Chinese mythology, and if you guys know, like, we do have a year of the dragon coming up, and this really coincides with a lot of the Aries energy. It's all coinciding with the eclipse energy. It's all coinciding with Pluto coming into Aquarius. So what does that all mean? And I'm just like tripping out because the books that I'm writing and how like dragons are symbolized is important. So I think that by talking about these stories, we are going to be able to unpack and uncover what the deeper truth is behind them. And I love anime so much, and there is deeper religion within Japanese culture. All of these stories are so old. They're like these older oral traditions that, of course, we have written texts, and lots of mythology have lots of different variations of things. So I think it's a lot of just like mapping out which ones resonate with us and why, and then what the symbols are with them and the commonalities, and what we can, do with all that, and crafting new stories and myths that tie these all together. So let's take a look. Although far different from the Western fire-breathing dragon, the Japanese dragon remains a fascinating and emblematic legendary creature from the land of the rising sun. It occupies an important place in Asian mythology, where many myths still refer to this force of nature. The Japanese dragon is also called Ryu. So Ryu, like Street Fighter Ryu, or Tatsu, is a snake-like creature without wings. So Japanese dragons do not have wings. Western dragons apparently do. A symbol of strength and power, and a dragon is highly respected and honored in Japanese society. So they are a lot more revered in Japanese culture as opposed to being feared. The Japanese dragon is known as one of the guardians of Buddhism. Many religious buildings and temples feature the dragon in order to protect their deities. So dragons are known as like protectors or guardians of gods and deities. In the Dragon Warriors, they're protectors of portals and the gates between worlds. So yeah, I could see that, because we're going to get into water as well, and the relationship between water and dragons. So it's an animal of Chinese origin. So they're saying it comes from China originally. The accompanying legends originated from China before spreading throughout the Asian continent. And did you know that the dragon possesses a sacred pearl hidden in its throat, providing it with all of its powers? Highly appreciated by humans, it brings happiness and wisdom to the one whom holds it. Now, the mythical animal has a long snake-like body covered with scales but no wings, and its appearance resembles a crossbreeding of several animals with a reptile body, tiger paws, eagle talons, a hairy camel's head, ox ears, and deer horns. And they're demonic eyes. I guess it's just more of them looking fierce. And there's like a note here that Japanese dragons have 3 claws instead of 5 claws. And before being transformed into a dragon, I think this is important to note as well, the process by which a dragon becomes a dragon. The creature would have gone through several stages of development, requiring thousands of years to complete. It would have started out as a snake and then mutated into a carp, and then a few centuries later it would have acquired its famous goatee before growing clawed legs and a tail. And by the end of this long metamorphosis, it would have developed horns to discern the sounds and to finish a crest allowing it to fully fly as an adult. That sounds cool, right? Let's see here. Now, known for its great longevity, this reptile lives in many aquatic environments, so a lot more watery, and it explains why it's often portrayed in water through Japanese artworks. And according to Japanese mythology, this creature has the supreme power to metamorphosize, so shapeshift, to lengthen its body, or even to become invisible. It also may take on human appearance, just like in Spirited Away, right? The anime that's in the top 5 pick from the Truth, Beauty, and Love show. You can check that out. I will leave a link to that if you want to check that out. And even though the creature can fly, so these dragons, Japanese dragons, can fly, it is not the main power and is more of a snake than a bird. Hold on, friends. I just need to make sure that I'm going live on TikTok as well because I am late. So I am only going to be going up to the dragon stories on this, and then I'm going to be doing the card readings just on TikTok, and that won't be long because it'll be the first one. Okay, just give me a second. Oh. Oh my gosh. I don't know what category this would be. Is this like a chat? Let's do chat. I don't really. All right. Okay, so. All right, so we are now live on both. I'm going to finish up the dragon story stuff first. So once the dragon stories are done, we're going to go into the card readings for all of the signs. For sun, moon, and rising signs, we're just going to do a 2-card pull. And yeah, we'll do a 2-card pull. I was going to be like, if it's major arcana, maybe 1, but we'll just do 2 just so that we have 1 and then another one just to clarify. All right, friends, let's go into, I'm just going to finish off this story just about the dragon stories in mainly Japanese myth, just because I love dragons. And so hello everybody for joining my first live. We're just going into dragon stories first, and then I'm going to go into some card readings for all of the zodiac signs. So let's go into the origins of the Japanese dragon. So the Japanese dragon takes its origins in the legends of the genesis of the universe, which is pretty cool, right? Shortly after the creation of heaven and earth, 7 generations of kami, so kami are Japanese gods, they were born. And the dragons would have appeared together with other creatures in order to protect them as the guardians of the celestial gods. So in Japanese mythology, it was said that they reign over the oceans and fight to defend the gods. So there are 5 types of dragons. The celestial dragon, which is a guardian of the kamis. Spiritual dragon, which is the god of wind and rain. The land dragon, guardian of rivers and oceans. Treasure defending dragons, that guards over precious stones. And the imperial dragon,
the symbol of the Chinese dynasty. So what do dragons symbolize? They symbolize strength, power, and unpredictability, and it may be dangerous, but I look at it as also like a symbol of like what women also represent too. And overall, it's a sign of good fortune, generally shows itself to be benevolent, and brings happiness, wealth, success, wisdom, perseverance, and immortality. And who doesn't like that? And rain. So you think about water and all of that kind of stuff. That is all attributed to dragon symbolism. So that, I'm not going to go into all that. I just wanted to go into one more thing about the Dragon King and the idea of like being shapeshifters. Your dog passed out on the couch. Oh no, just poke him a little bit, you know? Okay, so Watatsumi, also called Ryujin, is the dragon king and great god of the sea and the oceans. And this dragon is recognizable by his gigantic size and long mustache. And as the master of the tides, Watsumi governs all aquatic species. And the generous king welcomes shipwrecked people in his magnificent underwater palace. And one day, one of his beautiful daughters met Huri, a human being, who was roaming the sea looking for a hook. After falling in love with each other, they decided to live together in Watatsumi Palace. And after several years, Huri, who suffered boredom, wanted to return to the land and was afraid of his brother's reaction once he discovered that he hadn't found his fish hook. And so the king decided to summon the servants of his kingdom and ask them if they had seen the object he was looking for. By chance, a fish had just swallowed it, and so he returned to his beloved land, accompanied by his wife, the dragon goddess. And so that is the whole story of why dragons are also related to emperors and all of that kind of fun stuff. So that's stories as it comes to dragons and dragon mythology. I'm going to go into card readings. Just a second. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody who is on the other channels. So goodbye, everybody on YouTube. And we're going to go... Oh my gosh. Too many screens opening. All right.